Hi there everybody, Mom here today, and I am in the kitchen. We have closed on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at lunchtime. We're open from 4 to 8 on those 4 days, so that gives me some time to get in here in the kitchen when it's quiet. And today I'm making blackberry jam. And I love this time of year because the berries and everything are really in season, and the taste of them is so much better than any other time during the year. And I can always tell when the season's coming because the price falls dramatically. So I got a whole case of beautiful blackberries on a great price yesterday, and I decided, all right, today's the day for blackberry jam. So let me tell you a little bit of what I've been doing here. I went ahead and I sterilized my jars, and I sterilized my lids and my rings, and I crushed up my blackberries, my beautiful blackberries, and I put them here in the pan, and then I added in my pectin, because I do use pectin in my jams recipes. Added that in, and I brought this big beautiful pot of jam to a beautiful rolling boil. Then all at one time I dumped in my sugar, stirred that up, brought that back up to a boil, and boiled it for 1 minute. And I can tell when I stick my spoon in there, let me get a spoon here, that I'm gonna have good jam because it sticks. Can you see that? It sticks to that spoon. So that means that it is gonna gel up. It's gonna be great. Now, if all of that just rolled right off that spoon of this very big liquid, then I would know I was in trouble and my gel wasn't going to work. But this is going to be fine. So sometimes what you have to do with some of these fruit jams is you have to skim a little bit of the foam off the top of it. You can see here it's a little bit of foam. I put in maybe a half a teaspoon or so of butter to just sort of bring that down. But you can sort of see that that's got a little foam, but it's not enough to skim. So we're not going to pay any attention to that either. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to get this in our jars. Now over on my stove, I've got a great big old pot of boiling water going. There, you can see it there. And that is a canning pot. It's got a little release lid in the valve in the lid so that the steam, when it starts to boil, it doesn't rattle the top off, you know. And you can bring it back up and know what you're doing here. So I'm taking my wonderful old ladle. This was my mom's. And I've got my funnel on top of my jar. And I'm taking this jam right up to the edge of that funnel. And then I know that I've got it, my jam jar filled correctly. There you go. So then I'm going to grab a lid and a ring. How many times I've prepared these over the years, I can't even tell you. A lid and a ring, and I'm going to put it on top of my jam jar, and I'm going to grab a towel because this jam is really hot. And I'm going to twist it down. And I have got my canning racks ready, and let me show you what one of those are. I have a very, very old one here that I use all the time. This is a canning rack. So you set that down and you start by putting your jams in it. Your cans of jam. And you just repeat this process, filling up your jars. It is important that if you get any jam on the rim of your jar, that you stop a minute and you wipe that down, because that could possibly keep a seal from happening on your jar. And you're going to be able to tell when these are sealed, because after you take them out of the water, you're going to start hearing pops. And that means that you got it hot enough that all the air has left that jar and your home canning is complete. I have always loved to do this. When I was growing up, and I grew up on a farm in southern Wisconsin, and we lived, my parents and my grandparents and my uncle and us all lived together on a beautiful old farmhouse in Hazel Green, Wisconsin, rural Hazel Green. Can't hide all my friends up there. And summers were meant for this. And Mom had grapevines out back for Concord grapes. She grew the grapes and she would squeeze them out, and that was a process. And I'll tell you, anything like this can be very staining and very messy. You got to be careful. But she would strain them out, and we would have homemade grape juice, and then she would turn the rest into homemade grape jelly. And then, of course, we grew our strawberries, as almost everybody did up there. And we had strawberry jam. So we had a fresh batch that we would make every summer. And since I've been down here, I've made this on and off different times for the restaurant. And I'd love to be able to say I have it here all the time. But unfortunately, that's not the way it is, because for a long time, I was just the only person here doing stuff. Well, I just couldn't do it all, I just didn't have time. But this afternoon, I had some, and I thought, yep, it's jam making time. Then it just gets my creativity going, as I hope it does yours too if you're seeing me doing this. The process is not hard, and it is so satisfying to have this done. And when it comes to jam and jelly, oh my gosh, it's fun, and the sky's the limit. I mean, I can just tell you so many flavor combinations. Like, this is just straight blackberry, and I left the seeds in it. To me, that's blackberry jam, seeds and all. But you can, strain the seeds out if you want to. You can make this more of a jelly than a jam. You can add things to this. For instance, I've got a recipe for a blackberry lemonade jam, and that is really, really good. And if I get lucky enough where I get more blackberries, maybe I'll make more jam. But I love the flavor combinations. I love adding things to my jams. You can add in all different kinds of flavorings. Blueberry chipotle, strawberry margarita. Different kinds of liquors go really, really well in with these jams. I will tell you a little bit of a trick about that though. When you take your jam off the stove, and that's when you add your flavoring, you want to make sure that it cools down a touch before you add that alcohol, or you put that alcohol in there, and it just flares up, and to me it really sort of burns off the taste. I think you get more taste of the alcohol if you let your jam or your jelly cool down just a little bit, so it doesn't quite flare up like that. It's just good to know too, because sometimes that can scare you when that happens. When I was a kid, we canned everything. And we had a big garden, green beans, all kinds of pickles, chutneys. We had a crabapple tree. Grandma, she was the one that really loved to experiment. Mom did everything, that we needed to make sure that we got through the winter and had just everything in line for us. Grandma was the one that after she made sure she had everything, she decided to experiment a little bit. So I think I got that from her. But she would can crab apples, and she made crab apple jelly, and she made apple butter. We at one time had all kinds of apple trees on our property. And Grandma too had grown up. She was a northern gal. But when she married Grandpa, my grandpa's family was from the South originally, before they moved up north. And his sisters, my great aunts, they were wonders in the kitchen. And they taught Grandma all kinds of things. So I might have been up in the north and, you know, born in the north, but I knew all about chicken fried steak and dandelion greens and all that good stuff. And, you know, I was lucky. I had my grandfather, when I was a kid, I would taste something and maybe I wouldn't like it, and he would say, don't worry about it. He said, just take a bite. And he says, every time it's offered to you, you just take a bite. And by the time you're old, you'll like it. And he's right. And there is just not hardly anything that I won't eat. And I am so grateful to my grandfather for teaching me that. So I've just about got this rack full. And I do keep 2 racks on hand because another thing I got from my grandma is I don't do anything in little batches. I always do great big batches of things. But I've almost got 1 rack full, so the jars won't bounce around in my boiling water, and I'm ready to put my full rack down into the water. So let's get the lid off of this. Very carefully set your canning rack down in your canner. And you want that water to cover those jars by at least 2 inches. And if they don't, you're going to have to add more water to it. Get your lid on, let it come back up to a boil, which should only be a few minutes. And then you're going to let that process 5 minutes for jelly and 10 minutes for jam. The more dense your product is in your jar, you want to heat that longer. So the idea is to get that good and hot so that all that air is forced out of there. When the air goes out, the seal goes down, your food stays good. That's the process behind it all. So I'm going to let you go. I'm going to process that. And I'll be back in a little bit to show you how to get it all out of the water and take care of it all. So hold on for me, I'll be right back. Okay, my timer's done and it's time to get the jam out of the pot. Again, you want to be very, very careful doing this. I use 2 towels. I hook under the edge. Pull them up until I get a grip. You're going to want to be careful of drips on your feet. Bring it on over. And I do have my second rack of jam ready to go in. And if you can see it or not, let me move the thing. I've got a pan of water in the middle of it to hold my jars, so when I put the jars down in the water, they don't tip over because they need to stay upright. I'm going to go ahead and set this in quick a minute. While my water's still going good. All right. I'm going to let that process. All right, so when you do canning, they make a handy dandy little tool. Oh, did you hear that pop? That means that one of them's already sealed. They make this handy dandy little tool. It's called a jar lifter. I like to use this. Oh, did you hear that? There's another one. I love that sound. Okay, so we're gonna reach down in here. See if I can get my first one out without burning myself. Woo, there we go. Okay, and I'm gonna reach down in here and I'm gonna grab my jars. And I am putting them, because I have to move this in a minute, I'm putting them down inside of just a long sheet pan, but I'm setting them on a towel. And the reason you want to do that is because these things are boiling hot. Oh, there's another one. If you're going to put them on a very cold countertop, you run the risk of cracking your jar, and you don't want that to happen. So you set them on a towel just to sort of insulate a little bit. And then I'm going to show you another little trick I do just to make a jar look pretty. but they've got this water on the top of them. Of course, you just took them out of a water bath. But if you leave that water dry on top of that jar, it leaves a water stain that's hard to get off. And I don't like to mess with my jars too much after I've got that seal on there, you know. Used to want to take any chance of breaking that seal in any way. So I just go ahead and take a towel and I just dab that water off the tops of those jars so that when that dries up, that doesn't leave that white water line, I guess, if you will. All right, I gotta tell you, I snuck a taste of what was left over in the pot. And it's good. It's just darn good. And of course it's sweet. And of course you want to eat it sparingly, you know. But there's just nothing like making your own kinds of jams. And like I said before, you can do it in any flavor, any combination that you want to. And you know, when your kids see you doing something like this, all of a sudden it just makes them understand that it just doesn't come off of a shelf in a grocery store. There's a process to that, and you can just see them little minds just a clicking along. And how awesome would it be, you know, maybe this year you buy your strawberries. Maybe you even use frozen strawberries. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. A lot of times frozen fruit is much better quality and tastes better than even the fresh stuff when you get the fresh stuff out of season. So there's nothing wrong with that at all. How cool would it be if they said, Mom, can we grow strawberries? How neat would that be? And you know what? When you know where your food's coming from, it tastes better and it does you better, and you're just better all around for it. So I hope you enjoyed this. This is Blackberry Jam. I'm going to set some out on the shelf to sell, probably starting tomorrow after I get a label on it. Come on in and buy one if you want, but better yet, find yourself a recipe or ask me for mine and I'll give it to you, and make your own. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you all back tomorrow. Bye-bye.